TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark's at it.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark's at it stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. Excited and delighted to be with you guys again today. Got an awesome show planned for you. We're going to get into some awesome conscious conversation. We're going to be discussing spirituality and the power of music. So it's going to be a good discussion today. I got a great guest for you guys lined up. I want to say a quick thank you before I go any further to everyone who's been supporting the work, the music, the ministry, the podcast via Patreon. You guys allow me to do this from day to day. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for supporting the vision and coming on board with me. Give a shout out to some of the newest patrons we have within the last week or so. I'm going to give a shout out to Christopher Reese and his family. Thank you for coming on for the support. Chris has been a friend of mine for some years now, so thank you for finally jumping on board with the vision, man, and helping support it financially. Giovanni, which is, I believe this is the legendary Geo. It hangs out in Discord with us, brother. Thank you for coming on. And also thank you to Noah as well for coming on with your support as well, man. It means the world to me. Special thank you to the Diamond supporters. We have Benny Ween and his family. Noah is another one. And we also have Adam Brink. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. If you'd like to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of work, which is 10 plus albums, 200 songs. You get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics, which is pretty much the hands-on community aspect to what we're building here with the podcast, and learning to hear the voice of God, setting up a safe space to walk in the prophetic, be able to hear the voice of God, and essentially just be able to speak it out in a safe space. And we've seen a lot of people do this for the first time, and lives being changed over the internet with everybody coming together with the School of the Mystic. So it's real beautiful. And if you want to be a part of that, patreon.com/TruthSeekah. So with that being said, that's out the way. I want to welcome my guest today. This is Leonard Jones of MorningStar Ministries. Leonard, welcome to the podcast, brother. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, it's such a blessing to be able to speak with you. Like, I don't know if you get this all the time, but I definitely came up listening to the music you guys were doing at MorningStar in the mid-'90s. The birth of the prophetic movement in my book. I've read The Final Quest, and it was accompanied by all the CDs that you guys were putting out. And it was when God took me deeper in my own prophetic abilities, and the whole gifting was shrouded with MorningStar Ministries, all the people hanging out with, the churches, the conferences, the School of the Prophets and things like that was shrouded in MorningStar Ministries and music. So you were the soundtrack to really my spiritual awakening and walk with Christ, and I've encountered the Holy Spirit on so many deep levels through your music. So it's an honor and blessing to have you on my show and to be able to talk to you.
Well, it's awesome.
Would you say that MorningStar Ministries was kind of the pivotal marking for the prophetic movement? Like, I tell a lot of people, I hope I'm not facetious by saying this, but I say that there wouldn't really be a Bethel without the early MorningStar days. Is that safe to say that Bethel came out of MorningStar?
Well, I would say a lot of the musicians, came to our conferences, back in the day. And so I think we definitely influenced them. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, Jen and Brian had told me that, they were incredibly, impacted, and just about everybody that I've got all my friends like Stephanie and Josh Baldwin, who came out of our school, and just a whole bunch of the people that are with Bethel actually came through our worship school. And it's we definitely they have an influence on us, and we had an influence on them. It's
awesome.
It's definitely symbiotic.
Yeah. Do you think that you guys recaptured like the Davidic style of worship that was kind of lost for a long time? Do you guys think you went back and recaptured that?
I don't think we really actually had a plan. It was just one of those things. We just loved God. We loved to worship, and it all came together at the same time. Like the very first conference that was a big impact on the whole worship scene in general was the Heart of David conferences. And it was actually just one conference. We got 4 CDs out of that, live CDs. And I think it was like the perfect storm. The intercessors were really starting to rise up and take authority where they needed to. And at the same time, we had on the first stage, we had pretty famous studio musicians that had just gotten saved, or, had just started doing stuff for the Lord. And so you had like the pinnacle of musicianship along with the pinnacle of intercession. And then you add like a hunger to that, and we were just going for it. We had no idea what we were doing. We still don't, all we know is that we love God. I love music. I love to play music, and I use it all the time, to minister to the Lord with. I do it every day.
That's a neat phrase there. You use it all the time to minister to the Lord, and it kind of sets up this question here. What does that mean for you? Because I feel like there's a difference when we're like singing forth truths and prophetic utterances and like declaration versus we're singing about God versus singing to God. What's the difference there?
Yeah, well, like this morning, I was just basically practicing my guitar and singing, but I was directing that towards the Lord. You know what I mean? It's just a mind exercise, basically. I could practice, or I can practice like he's here going, saying like, hey, I like that. Do that again. Yeah. And it's like a musical fellowship, between me and God, and it's really where I get my worship time. In that, when I'm leading worship, I don't really get much out of that.
Too much going on, huh?
There's too much going on, but when I'm alone, in my little practice room and I'm just singing to the Lord, that's where I really get to connect.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, singing to the Lord, let me ask you about this, because when we're understanding music, we're understanding sound and stuff. And this is like a personal question that I had when it comes to like King David being a psalmist, and we see like the story where King David was playing before Saul, who was troubled by evil spirits, and when he played the stringed instrument, something happened, something shifted, and the evil spirit left. Let me ask you this. Is this because David was anointed and he was a psalmist and he worshiped the Lord and he understood the power of his music or whatever? Or is it just understanding the power of music in general, that music has the power to bring forth peace or change the mood or change the atmosphere, and anyone could do it? Or was it specifically that he understood that he was worshiping God with his instruments or something like that?
Right. Well, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, I mean, like, obviously in the secular world, they have music therapy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it really works, you know, and those people might or might not be Christian, you know, you never know. With my stuff, I've had hundreds of testimonies where they would just stick on. Like, I have these 4 violin CDs. It's just instrumental worship. You know, we just play out of my heart, you know, to the Lord. And so many people, I mean, Heidi Baker told me she has those on rotation. Mm-hmm. at her place, you know, and I've had lots of people say the same thing. Lance Wallnow told me that he likes to go running with that stuff. You know, so there's something about you know, just music in itself. It definitely has power. I mean, you can't go hear, you know, a Mussorgsky symphony or you know, Sibelius violin concerto and not be moved. Yeah, you know, and some of those guys may be Christian, they may not be, you know, but the music itself definitely has something to it. Yeah, I think that when you add a heart for God, yeah, I think it gives it a little extra punch. And I've had, there's a kid that came up in one of my conferences, and he said, and he was bald, and it was a kid, you know, and he goes, my parents brought me your song, "Oh Yeah," the long version. It's about 18 minutes or so. We just
listened to it in our Discord chat.
Yeah, and he said, I had it on continual rotation. I've been going through, I've got, what do you call it, bone cancer. And he said, my last scan, I was due to die. My last scan is I'm totally cancer-free. You know, and he attributed having that song playing 24 hours a day, that one song just repeating, yeah, over and over again. And that particular song, it was a mixture of so many things. There was things that we did in the studio, there was things that we did live, and we mixed and matched, you know, but if you listen to it, you can't deny when the spirit takes over and Ricky Skaggs jumps up on stage and grabs my mandolin or violin. I think I was playing mandolin. And just something happened over and over again. That whole conference, it was remarkable, you know, so the music itself has something, but there's also something about excellence that people lose. When you don't, you might be able to have a great spirit, you know, and a good heart and all that kind of stuff, you know, but when you're really great on your instrument, you can go anywhere the Lord tells you to go. Yeah. You know, that's kind of the difference in what we did and what the rest of the church was doing at the time, because we came into those sessions with pretty much great musicianship. You know, everybody, you know, if we're in C, if somebody changes to E flat, everybody goes, they're on it. You didn't have to have that whisper mic going, we're going to E flat now. You know, because everybody has perfect pitch. Everybody knew exactly where we're going. So that's why those prophetic moments would last 20 minutes. Yeah. You know, rather than, you know, like the Kevin Prosh thing that he did with us, the Praise the Lord, oh my soul. That actually was about 45 minutes long, you know, wow, and it was pretty awesome. But when me and Don Potter were mixing it, we had to cut it. I mean, I guess we could have made one album out of that whole song. But I think we cut it down to 18 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, but that was a prime example of everybody knowing what to do, because they were so well versed on their instrument, they could hear and listen. So you're listening to yourself, you're listening to from heaven, you're listening to your fellow musicians, and it's this whole intertwining thing that happens. And that's what I call prophetic, sound and prophetic music, because part of it's God, part of it's you. It's just this mixture. It's awesome. I love it. And to be honest with you, it doesn't work with untrained musicians. They really have to know what they're doing.
Yeah. It's like they want to go there, but they can't,
Yeah, they just don't know what to do. They don't have the grid,
Excuse me. Thinking about a psalmist, right? And we're talking about people just grabbing the instrument and playing. There's certain people that when they grab the instrument, and this is the people that I personally call a psalmist, when they pick up a guitar, violin, whatever that stringed instrument is, and they start playing it, and you immediately feel the power of God. Just they don't even have to open their mouth or anything. They can hit 2 or 3 notes, presence of God there. That atmosphere changes. They understand what's going on. I think that's a psalmist as well. So you have people who can do that just by playing the instruments. And it almost seems like the instrument is a conductor or a conduit for what you're going through, whether it's rage and anger and hatred. Like it can come out through your music. It can come out as you play. That energy gets amplified almost, or projected. Or if you're someone who's been fasting and you're just desiring God and going through, deeper levels with God, and you've been alone and you've going through that process, and you start playing the guitar, that comes out too, and that has a power over the atmosphere. Is that kind of what happens? Like the instruments, whatever they may be, are like a project. It's almost acts as a projector of what type of intention you want to push out there.
Yeah, whatever you're feeling is definitely going to come out in your instrument. Yesterday I was at John Mark McMillan's church, and I was playing violin and viola and cello, just picking stuff, and there was a lot of things going on. I couldn't hear extremely well, so what I had to do was really just listen for something first. I try not to overplay. I was playing on a couple of CDs with Jason Upton one time, and I saw the video, and I'm just playing all the time. I'm just like, whatever, and when I heard the CDs, I could hardly, every once in a while I could hear the violin. So they just kept pulling me down when I was overplaying. So then I've gotten to the point where I wait until I hear something in my head. When I hear it, okay, will that add to the music? If it will add, then I play what I hear in my head. And now that thing that's in my head, that could come from me. It also could come from God. Who knows? All I know is when people come up afterwards and they say, my God, when you started playing that violin, something happened inside of me. Yeah. I had a tendency to think those melodies that I would get, or the little whatever I would get, came from God at that time. Because I'm not that really of a great violinist. But I can play pretty much whatever I can hear in my head. I can play it. As soon as I hear it, I know where those notes are. And that takes a lot of ear training, So I'm mixing those things back and forth. I'm mixing what I'm hearing from God with my ear training, with listening to things. I think the results are, okay, does it really touch people? Does it really get past, when people walk into church and they get into a worship thing, their spirit usually is already open. Their soul usually is not. Their soul, which is their emotions, the feelings that you get, when you're in worship. A lot of times, you walk in, your spirit you'll sing the words, but your soul doesn't get touched, and so my idea is like, if you really want to get touch somebody's soul, you can't just play the spirit stuff. You've got to play out of your soul too.
Yeah.
And so when I play out of my soul and my spirit, which they're very intertwined, it's then that's when I notice a real difference. Whereas if I just played a solo, I see nothing, or hear, but if I just play something out of my heart and out of my soul, all of a sudden people have their hands raised, because they know they know that's different. And I believe secular people can hit the same thing. I mean, I watch concerts all the time. I'll see these concerts by, like Humphreys McGee or something like that, and you can tell they're playing a song, all of a sudden they get into this, it's like almost a prophetic groove. I don't know exactly how to explain it. And you look at the audience and everybody has their hands raised. Yeah. Because everybody knows, okay, that's supernatural. Because they don't know what they're doing. They don't, nobody knows what's going on up there. That something just took over. Now, whether or not that was God, who knows? But something takes over when when you get out of the black note, on the page, and start playing out of the white note that's inside of you, it really makes a big difference.
You think that was something that the prophets understood as well? Because like we see in the scriptures that there was a school of the prophets, and there's this awesome scripture that says that they come walking down the hill holding all their instruments, like they all have all these instruments or whatever, and they they were prophets. They understood that. Do you think that that's key? They understood the power of music and the power of worship and vibration and energy and all that kind of stuff?
I think they did. But I think it was just by accident that they found that out. I mean, King David, he just decided, I'm going to build this tabernacle. I'm going to hire all these musicians, and I'm going to get the very best of the best, and I'm going to pay them, what they're due. And But when that happened, all of a sudden the glory of the Lord came into the house, and the priest couldn't even stand to minister. Now, I don't think David knew or Solomon knew that was going to happen. I think they were just doing it because, but I'm just going to do this for the glory of God. But they didn't realize that God was actually touched by that music. And when he was touched, that's when the cloud came in. That's when the people couldn't stand to minister. When at the conference I was telling you about, at the last day of the conference, we did a song called "I Want to Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles, because this is a long time ago, and we had totally run out of Christian songs. We had nothing else. We knew nothing else. We were going to have to start repeating or something. So I just took the Beatles song, "I Want to Hold Your Hand." And man, the power of God came in the room. A cloud appeared on the stage, which we didn't have smoke machines back then. I mean, this was a real glory cloud. Yeah. Showed up on the stage, stayed for like 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And Gary Lund, the bass player that was playing on the session that day, he goes, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I think that's the glory cloud you've always heard about in the Bible." And so I'm looking out towards the audience. The audience is freaking out. Everybody's freaking out. I'm looking through this cloud, it's not smoke, because it looked like little particles of water or something, and it was like a mist, but it wasn't a smoke. And when it dissipated, it went like this, and just like disappeared, like in about 3 or 4 seconds. Huh. We had that on video. and it was just, but here's my take on it was God started to come into the room, his manifest presence. And I believe that you might call heaven a parallel universe. I don't know, whatever. I believe it broke through the veil for a second, and I believe that's when the atmosphere reacted to that power. The power of God came in, a cloud that I've never seen since, never saw before, heard about it, but I've never seen one like this. I've seen some things at other places, and I go, well, I don't know, that could be, just a light, burnt out or something, but this was real power of God, come in, and it was done by music, God, it affected God to the point he couldn't do anything else but come into the room.
What about smell? Have you ever had those encounters where we've been in worship or been praising and you'll smell a sweet aroma, maybe flowers or honey? Have y'all had those encounters as well?
I've heard of other people. I've never had it. I've, like I said, my best times of worship are, on my own, by myself, on a rock in the woods somewhere.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I don't know, those special manifestations, I believe, I totally believe God does them. The problem, the thing is, one person may smell it and the other person may not smell it. Mm-hmm. It's because that person needed to smell that. Now this particular night when the cloud showed up, everybody saw it.
Yeah.
So there was no mistaking. And me and Don Potter mixed the song and put it on one of our CDs, the worship CD. And when the cloud showed up, we only had 24 tracks of I think it was ADAT or something like that tape. When all the VU meters, when that happened, the cloud showed up, all the VU meters, 24 of them go like this.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Up to the top. Now that's impossible, because there's certain mics with different EQs, different mm-hmm. levels. All of them go like this, and you can hear it on the CD. You hear this rumbling kind of thing, like, I don't know, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, I mean, it was real, you could see it on the 24 tracks. We couldn't get it off. We couldn't figure out what it was. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. No, I remember that, man. Trust me, I do. And you can feel it's so weird how you're able to capture that stuff on CD, right? Or on the audio files. Just like, we would be, having our own prayer meetings at home, listening to y'all's music, and we'd listen to the crowd and listen mm-hmm. to the shift in the spirit, and we'd be able to be almost transported there with you guys. Couple years after that was taped, right, or filmed, if right. We're watching it on video or whatever the case was, and we'll be able to experience that with you. That's the beautiful thing about it, is that there is no such thing as time, right? That we can, right. especially with God. He's the God who kind of, throws his sins as far as the east is to the west. And I understand that as being, he's able to go back in time and just erase it like it never happened. You know what I'm saying? That's right. What he's able to do. So it's so beautiful when we get to experience his glory and that way manifested in our lives or in a group effort. It's so beautiful. So let me ask you about this, because there's this understanding now. We've kind of been studying it and hearing some people talk about it a little bit, and I've just tried it in my own life. And maybe it goes back to just understanding the power of music and understanding what, being a psalmist is, or having that intention before you go into worship maybe. But people are having these encounters, like you're saying, you go into your own, personal prayer closet with the Lord. You have this ecstatic encounter. He shows up, he loves on you, and you say, you know what? I'm going to bring this encounter now that I've experienced this, that when I do go into a corporate environment, I can tap into that place and bring you guys with me because I've experienced that. Almost like stepping into a portal or vortex, whatever you want to put cool names on it or whatever. Do you think that that's possible when you go into worship, and should you do that?
I think it's possible. Again, it relies on the how well trained the other musicians are, because I can do it myself. That's one of the reasons I can do it, because I can do anything I hear. I can do. Now, if I go in, like I lead the Friday night meetings here at MorningStar, and I use students, and a lot of them are super talented, but they're not super experienced, and neither are they super well trained yet. What I do in my worship school is, I mean, I put them through the ringer. I make them learn how to read music. I make them learn how to hear notes. They learn all their music theory. So that when they get in those situations, and they know what to do. They know when those chords change, what those chords are. And so it doesn't happen very often, with untrained musicians. I mean, it can, but it's not going to travel far and wide, like those CDs that you were talking about. I mean, the harmonica player, he played with Def Leppard, and he played with Larry Carlton, and all these really famous, folks. The other percussionist was like with Michael W. Smith. Don Potter was with Chuck Mangione, and with what's her name? The Judds. Susie was with so all these people were very famous studio musicians. And very well versed, and they knew exactly, as soon as those chords hit, they knew exactly what to do. Unexperienced musicians don't know what to do, and there's a direct correlation in how deep that you can go in the spirit by how well you are trained in the natural.
That's
and
deep.
I know, people won't, will negate that. Well, I can tell you where I've gone.
Yeah.
In the spirit with musicians like that, and I can listen to where they've gone, and it's nowhere near that.
Well, that kind of I think that principle kind of sets up the next question, because if that's true, then it must be universal for even your theology. Like, how deep God allows you to see how deep you want to go with him in worship, in experience. And we've seen a lot of people who may have been in the prophetic movement, stuff like that, and seen God move and do miracles and signs and wonders and all of these really cool things. And then they get with another sect of Christianity that says, you know what, that stuff y'all was into isn't biblical. It's not of God. That wasn't God who did it. Their understanding changes. They don't believe that anymore. And then now their doctrine and theology doesn't allow them to go that deep in the spirit anymore, because they're on this I want it on paper type deal. Show me on paper. It's not about experiences. Your feelings can deceive you, all of these weird things that come along with it. So it kind of lines up what you're saying, that what you've learned on the instrument, how much knowledge, understanding you've done there, allows you to go deeper. And essentially I think with your doctrine and theology, having either can be an open gate or a closed gate or a limiter on the things that you see in the spirit as well. Have you seen that? I mean, it's been people who come and go all through. That's part of the game, is people coming and going throughout our lives, and especially with religion and spirituality, like one little difference of opinion, you won't hear from somebody again sometimes, and it's kind of hard. But with y'all's movement and stuff, man, have you seen that a lot, where people's theologies will change, and 1 minute they're leading, they're in ministry with you, then the next they're slandering and telling people to stay away from you and things like that because of theology? Have you seen that?
I think it depends on where. Let me try to get my thought. I had a thought, but I just can't quite get it. Did they believe it in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, in other words, when I got saved, people were witnessing to me. I started going to this church for like 6 months before I got saved. And I sat through this Assembly of God church. So there was an altar call every Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, and so I sat through like 6 months of altar calls because to be honest, I just didn't want to be talked into something, you know? And so how I met the Lord was, I was reading the Bible, I was studying, I was trying to figure out, okay, is this true? If it's true, I want to follow. If it's not, I want to go on with my life. And I'm sitting in McDonald's on 3rd Street in Jacksonville, Florida, reading the Bible. And all of a sudden it was like my mind just flipped over. And I thought, God, this is true. What I'm reading is the truth. Jesus really did this. And I've always said this, you know, nobody talked me into it. So nobody can talk me out of it.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, and I look at, I saw the things that were going on, you know, that people were saying, this, you know, these outbreaks and all this kind of stuff, you know, and then a lot of those people still aren't following the Lord anymore, and they're off, you know, doing whatever they want to do. And I look at it and I go, okay, you really didn't believe that in the first place. You were kind of parroting what you thought people wanted you to say. And you were, you know, it's because if you believe it, and if it came to you in the nobody can take that from you, man. You know? And so I think that there's just a few things that I've held on to. You know, I hold on to, you know, the Lord himself, you know, and that he was, you know, and I state this all the time, you know, I don't know a whole lot I still say, I don't know a lot about you, God. I know you're good. I can tell that you're good. I know that, you know, I know that Jesus is the Son of God. I mean, there's nothing you can do to ever take that out of me. I know that he's the Son of God. I know that he was born of a virgin, you know. I know that he died. I know that he was resurrected. I know that he sits at the right hand of God. You know, that nobody can ever take that away because you know, and of course I'd heard that, but when he showed me that it was true, then you can't take that away from me.
Yep.
You know, and there's a big, I don't know what it's like in Mobile, you're in Alabama or
Mobile. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I go to a lot of churches around the world, you know, and there's a lot of people just not going to church anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, good people but a lot of them still love the Lord.
Yeah.
A lot of them are still, you know, watching videos or reading the Bible, witnessing and stuff, but they're just tired of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand it. You know, I every time I do a meeting somewhere, I always ask myself the question, why do we do this? You know, why are we here? What is the use of what we're doing? You know, and it always, to me, always rolls back to my relationship with God, not my relationship to the church, not my relationship to the truth, my relationship with God. And I just enjoy him. You know, I enjoy playing my guitar to him. I enjoy playing my violin or piano or mandolin or sitar or whatever I'm playing. I enjoy that, you know, and he seems to enjoy it too, you know. And so, and I don't know the answer, and I don't know what the answer is that's going to get people back into church. You know, I do know that church as it is right now is not working for the next generation for the most part. Now there's a few hot spots, but I'm looking at
Bethel.
You know, yeah,
it's definitely a hot spot.
Yeah, but I'm looking at most places and I'm going,
yeah,
you know, okay, the music is great, the preaching is great, the building's great. Why isn't this place packed out with hungry young people?
Yeah.
You know, now I see it some other places. I was just in Borneo a couple of months ago, and the little church was just packed to the rim.
Yeah,
You know, of these people, and And this is in a country, it's a pretty much a Muslim country, and this is a Christian church, but they still had the guys on the one side and the girls on the other side, of the church. I mean, there was 2 seating sections, but as soon as the worship started, the whole church came forward.
Yeah.
And it was all intermingled at that point.
Dropped out for a second, my internet. We're good though.
Okay. Anyway, so that's my answer is I don't know the answer on how to get them back into the church, but I'm not so sure it's not God, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah.
Because sometimes God has to let something like a system die in order to create a new system, because he can't take that old wineskin and do what he wants to do.
And there's this weird resentment that's there as well for those, like, from the church leaders.
Oh yeah.
For those who quit going and they're like shaking their finger, or you always say, well, they're not walking with the Lord anymore. And there's this thing I've been finding out, just to let people know that, look, just because you don't go to a church, it doesn't mean that you're not part of the church, and that God hasn't given up on you, and God, still loves you and still can use you. And I've just been, singing that from, this podcast and reaching people who are looking into other things, like they're gone into different movements, or they may be gone into New Age or witchcraft or whatever the case is. But they still love the Lord, but they just aren't fulfilled in church because of the different, rules and regulations and weird theologies that have to die off, with time and stuff too. And it's like they love God, but they can't keep their mouth shut because there's just so many weird things that we've put up with over the years that people now, they're not having it. And just so, because there is still a hunger there for people. People still love God, and they're going to bring God with them in wherever they are. They're doing a pretty good job at it, man. But it's just to let them know that you're not alone, right?
Right.
I'm dealing with that a lot. So it's really cool. Just, I mean, obviously that one phrase, you're not alone, like, for me, it's done wonders for people, just letting them know. And like, it's just so easy. And I get so many messages. Wow, I thought that this was, my pastor said this, or so-and-so said this, because I'm not this. And say, look, God hasn't given up on you just because you think differently, you act differently, you worship differently, whatever the case is. Like, you're still part of the kingdom, and just seeing life come back to people, man, it's beautiful.
Yep.
But there is still a hunger there, but it's just like, I don't, I'm
there's no doubt. And people are they're more open to talk about God right now than any time I've ever seen it.
Yeah. Part of me was thinking that it may have something to do with social media, like with the internet and information. Everything's there at your fingertips, and it's almost like it takes the place of that need of Jesus, because whatever you need is there, but it's never going to, like, what I'm saying, deep down, it's never going to replace that void. So it's always there, but maybe because we're changing as a society, as a people, as humans, really, the way we interact with technology, it's changing our genetic makeup, all this stuff is changing, but it's never going to take that void away. It's never going to. So it's really strange to see with the generation coming up under us, their need and how they are reacting. When do they get there? Is it at 14? Is it at 12? Is it when they reach puberty? Is when they have an encounter? When is it? So it's very interesting to watch the next generation come up and say, when is the key moment that we need to, how do we, present the gospel in a way that's appealing? The gospel is appealing, and not water it down, but how do we present it to them where they're going to get it,
Right.
It's really interesting. But back to the subject of music, let me ask you about this. You always hear, Satan was the worship leader in heaven. And I don't know if that is sound theology. I know I've heard it for years. What do you think about that? Because when people are talking about the power of music, and music travels through the air, and Satan's over the prince of the air and things like that, I always hear these little one-liners when it comes to be careful about the music you listen to. Even in churches, like there's a lot of churches that don't even let you play drums or the tambourines or cymbals and things like that. What do you feel when it comes to the devil being over music?
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of junk.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I never believed it. I've read those scriptures, and I'm thinking, He's talking about a king.
I know, right? Come on now.
Yeah. He's just talking about somebody, and somebody just like, but it preached good,
Yeah.
And people go, "Ooh, that's something new." It's like tickling ear. The Bible says that in the last days, people are going to have itching ears. Oh, tell me something new. And it's like, that's not even, like you said, I don't think it sounds theology whatsoever.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think music is in the hands of the human soul and the human spirit.
The intention.
And you can take it either way.
Yep.
You can, and of course, I think that the devil can definitely influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you do have to be careful of what you listen to. I let one of my daughters listen to some stuff, and I shouldn't have, and I was just trying to be open-minded.
Yeah.
And now looking back on it, I thought, man, why did I do that? And one of my reasons was, I thought, that's actually, the music is really quite good, but I really should have stopped it, so I think if they're in your household and you're over authority and you hear something and they're doing something wrong, spiritually, I think you should stop. Obviously you can't. I don't know if it's so great from the pulpit to say something, about it, but if they're in your household and somebody could say, well, the pulpit, that is that pastor's household, and maybe, I think everybody has to do it, whatever they think is, the best way to do it. I do know that, I made the mistake. My friend, a friend of mine was running sound for Marilyn Manson. And he said, man, you need to see this show. He said, and my friend is a Christian. And he says, he was doing he was running sound for the Ozfest here in town. So I took our sound man and one of my keyboard players. I said, do you guys want to go? And we, we went, and when he came out on the stage and berated the Lord and berated and in 2 minutes, I said to the guys, I am so sorry. I didn't know it. I said, we need to leave. And I took him out of there. I was going on my friend's advice. He said, man, this is the best show out there. And I'll be honest with these. Marilyn Manson musically is a genius. The music he was creating is incredible. But man, when you add that bad spirit, and it's a bad spirit, along with it, then I can definitely say to you as a Christian, don't listen to Marilyn Manson. Because I've had experience with it, and I go, you just don't listen to that kind of stuff, because he blatantly was going after the Lord. And but did Satan give him that power? Not in the least. God gave him the power to do it. Alice Cooper, who now is a Christian, he wasn't using it for God. Now he uses he still does his
same
show,
songs,
but he talks about God.
Yep.
And
Dave Mustaine from Megadeth as well. Brian Head Welch from Korn.
I think it can all be, but God gave those, every good and perfect gift. The Bible says comes down from the Father of lights, and Satan is not the father of lights. He's the prince and the power of the air, which is different. And so, and music is a good and perfect gift, so now it can be perverted. Again, I think it's through the human soul, and what they have worshiped.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. What they've worshipped. You hear that a lot about Christian leaders taking the youth group to go see movies, and they walk in and like, we gotta go,
Right.
they take them in and they got to apologize and stuff like that. And it happens with movies, but sometimes you got to take a chance. Sometimes you could be missing out, or you don't want to just be in fear that the devil is here or the devil is there. I mean, there's those people out there too. When it comes to secular music, though, what do you think the deal is? I know it's just music in general. I've heard stuff where like there are secular songs that, I don't know, maybe are anointed or speak to you where you are. Maybe that's what's going on. You guys have redone a lot of secular songs over the years and did a really good job at it. I can't listen to those secular songs now without hearing your lyrics, so that definitely happened. So what happens there? There's people that are saying that they are anointed. I've heard catchphrases, well, they're just running from the Lord and they don't know it. And I've heard other analogies just saying that, you know, the scripture says that the giftings and callings and talents are without reproach. The Lord doesn't give it to you and take it away. So they're anointed. Now they're doing the devil's work. But there are those secular songs. I don't know if they were created or if they were raised in church or they knew what they were doing, but there's something there that some of those songs are just more anointed than what we hear on Christian radio, you know?
Oh, by far. Yeah. Well, when God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, he told them, he said, go and borrow. It's funny that he uses the words borrow, because he knew that they weren't going to give it back. He said, go borrow gold, borrow all the things that you need, you know, and get it from your owner. So and the Bible says, and this way, that's how they spoiled the Egyptians. They went and they got all this stuff. Well, they took it into the wilderness, and that's what they built the tabernacle with. The stuff that they stole, you know, from Egypt. You know, now it was due them. It was back wages, you know, but they lied. You know, they went and as far as I can tell, and I could be in the wrong here, but I remember in the Bible, it says, go and borrow from your, you know, from the people, you know, the Egyptians, and then they were going to go out. And so they go out, you know, and they build the temple. Well, I look at secular music as that gold, you know, that I just take it. I mean, right now we're learning a song by Chicago called You're the Inspiration, you know, and you don't even have to change one word. Instead of, you don't have, well, I don't say baby in the song, but, you know, you might have heard that song, you know, that da 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 da, da, and it's a really cool song. And
kind of like what is it, sloppy wet kiss? We got to change that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I can worship to that stuff. You know, I don't have any problem with that at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's, to me, that's the gold that you build the temple with. You know.
Oh, so we're talking about music. Let me just transition to this, see what you got to say about this. So with music is always accompanied with the dance. Where does dance come in to worship? And I'm sure that over the years, there have been people who come in and do deep studies on the power of dance and chains falling off of you. David danced, you know what I'm saying, nakedly before the Lord, you know, without any restrictions or anything like that. Where does the power of the dance come through, like in breakthrough and worship?
Well, it's not used very often. You know, I can tell you that I'm sitting in a room. I'm at what used to be called PTL with Jim Baker and Tammy Baker.
Yeah.
I came to work here about 30 some years ago to work for Jim Baker before his big fall. And I used to do the music here on the grounds for PTL. And the lady that danced here, I can't remember her name right now, but she would dance. She would just she would dance to CDs and stuff like that. And I've never been touched like that. Nobody's ever sung a song that touched me the way that dance touched me.
Wow.
You know, and I have these friends of mine up in Otter Tail, Minnesota. It's a place called the Creamery. It's the most creative community I've ever seen in my whole life. The dance, the art, the music, the architecture that they come up with. You know, I mean, it's in magazines and stuff. And the pastor's daughter, Sophie, who was one of my students, and I had a school in Germany for a while, and she came to this school too. She did a dance troupe a couple of years ago, and I mean, it was, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos, Stomp.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was that caliber.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, with rhythm things, you know, with poles and stuff, you know, and just like, you know, it was very, very powerful. I don't see that in work. You know, I see like ladies with long dresses spinning around with the tambourine.
Was she by herself doing it, or was there more people?
No, she had about 9 kids with her, all super trained. I mean, it was as good as anything Janet Jackson ever put on, or Beyonce, or any of those. I mean, it was awesome, you know. And of course, the devil does not want to get that out of the bag. You know, he wants to keep that, you know, totally in the secular world. If anybody tells me that dancing is of the devil, why is it that when a 1-year-old is learning how to walk and the music comes on, that they start jumping up and down? You know, you know. You hear
weird theologies out there, though, man. You know, there's all kind of crazy stuff you have to put up with over the years. Traveling to a lot of churches myself, doing gospel rap actually over the years, and I've just seen just crazy stuff over the years. I'm down here in the Bible Belt too, so it's just like you can imagine.
Right.
The churches right next door to each other have these crazy ideas about what God is and what he looks like and what he allows and things like that, you know?
Right.
What was your favorite album with MorningStar, and what was your favorite album that you've put out by yourself? Under your name?
I think Battleground was a really good album. It's mostly my songs, but it just, there was energy on that. I don't hear a lot of energy in worship music anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and it was there was just some great songs, you know, on that. And when that came out, I took John Mark McMillan and Amber Brooks and Luke Skaggs and my son and Fergus Marsh, the bass player for Kevin Prosh, and we went down to Brazil, and we were doing this youth conference down there. It was like 5,000 youth, you know, and me and Luke Skaggs had written this song called Burning Bush, which is like it's kind of like a fiddle tune, but kind of rock and roll fiddle kind of a thing. And all of a sudden, like 2,000 or 3,000 of them started yelling out, Burning Bush, you know. And I'm going, how in the world, we just put that album out. How in the world do people in Brazil know that song?
Yeah.
Sorry that my computer just did that.
You're good.
And the so anyway, that album was awesome. Still to this day, my favorite CD that I put out is a thing called Perspective, and I love that album because it was one of those things where it was I had just left MorningStar for a while to start doing worship schools all over the world, and you know, when I left, I was going, I started listening to the way I was playing, the way I was writing, and I thought, wow, I'm not very good anymore. I've gotten really bad, and I started spending real time thinking about my lyrics. What am I trying to say? You know, thinking about my music. What am I trying to say with my music? And so I wrote these songs, and they came just from my private time in the morning, just playing unto the Lord. And I went out and did this conference out in Colorado, and this place called Resurrection Church, really cool church. And the pastor, it was a men's meeting. There was about 1,000 men there, and they were really touched by the new songs. And the pastor said, man, these are awesome songs. He said, when are you going to record them? I said, well, I don't have a job. Whenever I get the money, and he goes, well, how much would it take? And I said, I don't know. And he went out after the last session. He goes, look, how many of you guys like these songs? And, everybody went like, yeah, he said, we're going to take an offering and we're going to get these songs recorded. And they took up an offering, and it was $36,000,
Wow.
And so I had a studio here in town, GAT3, which is a really great studio that Jason Upton does a lot of stuff there. And just everybody uses it. It's probably the best studio on the East Coast. So I went in there, I hired all the musicians, the best musicians I know, to come in and play. And I paid them what they would get in Nashville. I paid each musician $600 a day, which is that's a normal, for a high quality studio musician, they get $600 to $1,200 a day in Nashville. And so I didn't have that budget restraint that you normally have. And so consequently, that album was really high quality. We recorded it at 96 rather than 44.1. We mixed to high speed, 1/2-inch tape. I was going to go analog, but the tape cost was going to kill me, And so I ended up, I went in 2 hours in the studio and recorded every instrument, and we ran tape, 1/2-inch tape on a Studer 24-track machine, and then we also ran 96K on Pro Tools, and that was the closest thing. You could probably go up to 188 or whatever it is, higher resolution on Pro Tools, but we could hardly tell the difference. We could still tell a little difference on the analog and the Pro Tools by running higher resolution, but the difference in tape costs and time and all that was like $6,000 or $7,000 more dollars, and I just didn't have it. But if I ever get the money again, I will totally go analog everything.
It's people who swear by it, man.
Oh, there's still, digital doesn't really still come close yet.
Yeah. The records, that's coming back too. I think they said vinyl sales right now are actually higher than CD sales. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, CDs aren't selling anymore too.
Yeah, but they are going back to the vinyls though. That's the thing,
right?
Makes you think, spend the extra money to do it to get the sales. So that's real interesting how something will come out and then something will kind of be obsolete and then it'll come back. I think it's nostalgia though, for the most part, Yeah,
but it's also just sit in a room, put a CD on, then put a record on, and you can hear the difference. CD goes from like 20 hertz up to like 20,000. Records go from 1 up to whatever has been created, 50,000, 80,000. Way beyond the hearing range. Yeah. But you feel those high end things. You feel them in the hairs in your nose, ears. That's why it sounds different. Yeah.
You can hear it. Hearing is one thing, but feeling it's another.
Right.
Have you done any studies on what is it? Cymatics? Have you looked up any documentaries or done any studies? Well, it's pretty much the different. There's tones and chords that you can play, and water and sand will actually take the shape of that.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
I have seen it. Yeah.
And there's certain notes. That's something you can feel as well. Like you play that off note or that chord that's just kind of like, it just feels depressing when you play it, and all depressing songs are in this key. And essentially, like if you do it with the water, you can hook it up to a speaker, and it's pretty easy to make. I'm going to make one, but it makes out these complex geometric patterns the ones that are pleasing and more aesthetic sounding to the body make you feel good. They make beautiful patterns. And the ones that are just like confusing and feel bad, they make just confusing patterns. And then our body is made out of 70% water, is it? You know what I'm saying? So when we're hearing that music or the positive words or affirmations are being spoke over you, like it has something to do with that, man. Like the energy that is through sound, whether it's our voice and just vibration and energy and frequency in general.
Right.
It's real beautiful. Well, you want to talk a little bit right here at the end about your school and what you got going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'd be real cool.
We run it's a 2-year program. And it's basically, I run it pretty much. I went to music school. I went to 4 years of university. And I pretty much teach them everything that they would learn at a university musically. And what we have every Friday night, we have a meeting that we do worship for. And that's kind of like our recital for what we've been learning all week. And because I think probably the difference in our worship school, I try to keep it small. In other worship schools is there's a lot of practical training goes on here. I mean, we really teach them how to play. We teach them how to sing. We teach them how to write music. Everybody, the whole class, everybody writes their own songs. That I don't allow them to bring other songs in. If they're going to lead, they're going to lead from a MorningStar, like a song that one of our alumni had, or me or Don or Susie or alumni have written, because I'm trying to create a whole different sound. And, when you're bringing the traditional worship sounds are, I have to admit they sound good, but they're musically, they're not very tantalizing,
Mm-hmm.
And so, I do a half-hour lesson with every student every week. And that's where I work on their compositions with them. And some of the compositions that are getting ready to come out right now are pretty awesome. And then we have a theory class every week where they learn all their theory. And then also I take all the songs that they're learning and I explain the theory behind those songs so that they learn how to write their chords. They learn how to read music. It's kind of it's the same thing you would learn in the university. It's just done with worship in mind. Mm-hmm. But by the time everybody leaves here, they all can write their own songs. They all can play their instruments way better. It's not sitting in a classroom listening to. We don't teach them about worship. We teach them to worship.
Yeah.
I try to teach them how to worship in the practice room, not wait until you get out on the stage. Mm-hmm. And so we have extended periods of time. I don't know if you can, this our practice room. I don't know if you can see it, but it's, we got a Hammond, and we got guitars, and we got, I got both of my Marshalls in here, and it's just filled with instruments, some of them are actually not here, but it's just a huge, it's probably the most important thing I've ever done.
Wow.
Is trying to get, I'm trying to get them to change the sound of what's going on right now. I'll be 67 in a couple of months, and I don't know. I want to start hearing stuff that pleases me too.
Yeah.
That I don't want them to write like me.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm after. I want them to write like themselves, but I want to give them the tools to do that.
It's no, and this isn't a dig at anybody, but like when you're listening to Christian radio, Christian music, I think, I'll say his name, Jeremy Camp knows how to write a good worship song, right? Mm-hmm. And he's been doing it for maybe 20 years now, where he's just got this formula. They all kind of sound a little bit the same, and it's like, okay, I learned how to do it, and I'm just going to keep repeating almost the same song, change the lyrics up here a little bit, and it just works for him. And so, is that kind of what you're saying? Just like quit doing what everybody else is doing, especially if we're like able to so-called access the courts of heaven, hear directly from God, and He's just gonna like we should. I really do think in the kingdom we should be ahead of the secular realms. It's not like trying to copy what they're doing, but we're able to kind of take a new sound, bring it to the table, and to get them to copy it. And I've actually seen that in the hardcore Christian metal scene. There was some bands that got really big in the mid 2000s in the hardcore Christian metal, and all the secular bands were stealing from them. There were Norma Jean, Under Oath, some of those bigger bands, As I Lay Dying, Christian bands, and the secular guys were copying them. That actually happened in the mid 2000s. And so I really feel like that's how we're supposed to be able to do this, to bring something new to the table, to make them like, oh, hey, let's try that, versus the other way around. I know it can work both ways, but do you feel like that we're able to do that too, where we don't just have to keep, like, you know what I'm saying, regurgitating what's working or whatever?
Right. Well, the problem what you have in the worship movement, or whatever you want to call it today, is it can be financially motivated, so nobody wants to rock the boat.
Yeah, exactly. So, there you go.
You know what I'm saying? And so consequently, if I personally think the love of money is what ruins worship.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid. I mean, you have probably 1 million churches all playing the same songs.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're easy.
Yeah.
And because they listen and they're anointed. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
The songs are anointed, and it's become it's like a song mill, coming out, that, and if you veer off any from that thing, it's not going to get played.
Yeah.
In the regular churches. And what I'm trying to teach these guys is, if money is your God, or if money is important to you, don't do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because there's not that. I mean, I've made pretty good money. I get good royalties and stuff, but it's gone up and down. I mean, if I look at those songs that those guys write, and I go, what a well-crafted song. Yeah. It's a well-crafted song. However, I personally wouldn't listen to it, but it kind of, I've seen this. I've been through the whole thing, I saw Maranatha music come. I saw it go. I saw Integrity music. Oh
God, that's Integrity. Yeah, that's where mine. I mean, that's where they came from, Mobile, right? I know they had a studio here.
Yeah. And I like those guys. I'm friends with them, and stuff. And I've seen Bethel music. I've seen the stuff, the Australian guys, the Hillsong. I've seen Elevation. All these guys, and they are not going to rock the boat.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. But after a while, people do get tired of it.
Exactly. So you got to be able to change with the season, or change when God says change, right?
Right.
Because you're doing something that works. The whole thing about following God, following Christ, is that cloud actually moved. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We have to be willing to walk in the Spirit, is to be able to walk in the cadence with the Holy Spirit, and hearing that new song, the new song of the Lord, hearing that, being able to kind of move with that. But if it's working, like you said, they're like, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So they're just going to stay with it. The checks are coming, the songs are coming.
But it will fix itself eventually. I mean.
So if the person doesn't change, they either get left behind because they're still stuck in that same sound, or the church moves on because they're ready for a new sound. But a lot of times those people are left in the wake of not wanting to rock the boat, right, in the end. So it really doesn't work out in the long run. You have to be willing to change.
Yeah, I look at the people like Keith Green, okay.
Mm-hmm.
What why are people still listening to him? Why are people still, singing his songs? I still hear it,
Yeah.
in young people. I'll ask the people, I'll ask my class, I'll say, okay, how many of you guys have heard of Carmen? Amy Grant, maybe a few, how many of you have heard of Keith Green? Everybody.
Wow. Yeah.
What's the difference? Musical integrity.
Mm-hmm.
The guy could play. He knew how to play. I mean, he could sit down to a piano by himself and do a concert and blow you away. So he had the spiritual end, he had the musical end going on. So I think when you add the spiritual and the musical end, then you're going to have some longevity.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people that you're hearing right now, in 20 years, you won't hear of them.
I know
but Keith Green,
that's the thing about
Keith Green was 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And it still has longevity. That's the thing with the radio too.
Right.
Like you find these people and I guess it applies to Christian music in the radio too. You hear these songs and they're good for, if you want to call it their, 15 minutes of fame. That 15 minutes could be a year. That 15 minutes could be 3 months. But you don't remember them. Like you remember it because it meant something to you, but you're not digging up their old material and like, man, there was something that this music transcended time. There's so many singles that come out and they're big for those 9 weeks or whatever, but then they just fall back. They come make their quick money. This happens in hip hop, happens in pop, and they're just pushed under. Versus those people that you can name, that you've been naming. We can look at the legends, and people are still listening to their music, and their music is timeless.
Right.
But what about this too? Because we've discussed this a little bit with those legends. Some of those people. Now we could say, we could say Bob Marley. We can say Kurt Cobain. Some people who brought something different and changed it and kind of, put their stamp on the music industry, birthed something. I think they sung from their soul. They accessed that. They might not have been able to access the spirit, but they accessed their soul. They changed the way they made music that when you played it, you can feel what they were going through, whatever it was. And usually it wasn't to glorify God. Sometimes it was, right? And you could feel that.
Right.
What about this? So those legends, if a lot of those guys died in their prime, right? And that kind of helped their destiny, sealed their destiny. They got to die at the pinnacle of their career. But on the other end, we're seeing people now, where your idols will be destroyed. Your idols fall in the end. And if they don't die in their prime and they don't get right with God, we're able to see these people who were like, they called Michael Jackson the king of pop music, the king of rock and roll. If they don't get their life right, if they don't balance stuff, we get to see these leaders fall. And then it kind of diminishes the legacy because we remember them in that last state. It happens with hip hop. If the rapper wasn't killed at the height of their career, they end up putting out a lot of music that just isn't good anymore. They weren't able to change like we're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Have you? What would you say to that, to those people with their legacy, or maybe it just ties back into being able to change and not be stuck with the music?
Well, if I'm talking to musicians, I just say constantly be learning. Like I'll take songs, and I'll just because I listen to what they do and I go, man, I really want to learn how did he do that? I want to learn that, So I'll take say Dave Matthews. I learned the guitar part to Satellite, and to learn how to do that and play at the same time, just to learn it. I take John Mayer's song, Neon, because it's just a hard guitar part, and so I'm constantly taking stuff like that and just, and what ends up happening is that kind of music kind of gets him, and I end up writing a little bit like that. Same thing with the violin. I'll hear something. I'll go, man, I want to learn that. I've transcribed whole solos by Jean-Luc Ponty and these different, violinists, just to keep, you have got to keep expanding.
Yeah.
Otherwise if I mean, I discourage all of my students from listening to worship music while they're in the school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, don't listen to Marilyn Manson,
Yeah.
but don't, I said, the reason is I want you to start writing like yourself and not like these people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to write like me. Now they learn a lot of my songs because my songs have a lot of chords in it that they'd never hear.
Mm-hmm.
They'd never do in a normal setting, and then I teach them a lot of secular songs, too, because I want them to learn there's more than 3 or 4 chords out there, and then how to put those chords into effect, and so that they will have longevity.
Yeah.
So that their music, when they're 60, I'll be 67 when even though it's not the most popular music in the world, I know that, but it's in the church, it's some of the most creative, because I'm throwing things in all the time, because I had my hand on the pulse of what's going on in music in general.
Mm-hmm.
In the rock scene, in the mega rock scenes, and the jazz scene, the bluegrass, all that. I keep very aware of what's happening, and so I write with those styles in mind, so I can, because they're not going to hear this in church.
Yeah.
They won't hear this stuff, and they'll never, now they may go out, but I have heard that all the guys that came through the worship school, which is, you probably know a lot of them.
Yeah.
Really famous at this point. If you listen to them to this day, I think they're the best worship leaders out there. I mean, they're writing the most creative and the most, but they've toned way down from what they've learned here. And you have to.
Got to kind of combine it almost, right?
Yeah, the stuff that we're learning here it will never be mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like the people that walk down the runway, showing off those clothes. Nobody would wear those clothes on the street, but the next year you see that style influencing what's sold in Kmart,
Yep.
And that's what I look at ourselves and what we're doing here. We are here to influence them. We're not here to make them into our image whatsoever, and I'm sure that they will, it's going to really, I'm just writing a number of songs with the students right now. And, this one girl, she came in and we wrote the song, and it sounds like a really cool old Nickel Creek song, if you know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a bluegrass hip, it's a really cool sound. And, so they are all writing different styles. One of the keyboard player, I listened to what he was coming up with. I said, man, have you ever listened to a group called Chicago? He said, no. I said, because the way you're writing is just like them, and he's a young guy, a kid from Mongolia. And so I made him learn the piano part to the You're My Inspiration by Chicago, because I wanted to see what was out there. I said, this is the style you're gravitating towards anyway. So I think longevity basically has to do with keep learning and keep changing. Don't now if you're James Taylor, no, don't change your style. Stay James Taylor.
Could break you if you change too much. If something that's working, it's working for a reason. But there's going to be a season where it doesn't work anymore, and you gotta be able to know when. Like, hey, I got to change this up. Let me ask you just a quick shout out to my wife. She has always said over the years that she has no musical bone in her body. And I've always played in bands and did music and done my recording and all that kind of stuff. But with her, when it comes to music, she says she couldn't sing. She had this weird, ungodly belief, really, that there's no way, even if she wanted to, she could learn music, tempo, theory, nothing like that. She just started playing the uke. And she's being consistent. She's learning. She's showing up. She's practicing every day. And she's getting better, and she's kind of blowing her mind because she's told herself that there was no way possible that this could happen, and she's starting to sing a little bit, and she's really enjoying it. It's blowing her mind. What would be some advice for her just starting out, just learning how to sing, just learning how to play, and kind of combining the two? What would you say if somebody was playing the uke, just starting out and still kind of afraid of their voice even a little bit?
Yeah, I think in the beginning is just find what we have a real advantage with the internet.
Yeah.
Just find some stuff and learn it. In other words, go on, and say, okay, how do you play this song on the ukulele? Put it up, go to YouTube.
It's most likely going to come up. Yeah.
It most likely somebody's already put it on there. Learn it. When I was growing up, I had to go to concert. If I wanted to see live music, I had to go to a concert. They didn't have live music on anything. When I turned into a teenager, they had a thing called Don Kirshner Rock Concert. That was the first time they had rock music on television. So if I wanted to go, I had to go to a concert. And that's how I learned to play, as I'd go and I'd watch these guys. I'd watch Clapton, or I'd watch the Allman Brothers were in Jacksonville at that time. I'd go to it and watch them, Skinner, and all these guys from Jacksonville were playing around. And I'd watch what they were doing. That's how I learned, but you guys, the younger
you don't have an excuse anymore, right?
Yeah, you got it at your...
So there's no particular website to go to, or?
I think they can go to leonardjones.com also.
Okay.
But for the most part, I just use Facebook for the most part.
Heck yeah. And it's good that too, that you're actually doing that. Because I've just heard people like on this way out there, super spiritual stuff. It's like they'll say this, when it's time for me to play, the Lord's going to teach me, that I'll just be able to walk up to the piano and the Spirit will lead me what to play. Isn't that kind of weird? They kind of.
I've heard it a number of times, and then I listen to them, and I say, "Well, he didn't teach very well."
He never does it. He never did it. Yeah, I've heard that over the years too. So it's good to use wisdom in all areas. So if you guys looking to, if that's what you feel like the Lord's calling you to, lead worship, definitely get up with Leonard Jones, and he's definitely has a long list of songs and other musicians who are successful right now and leading the game right now that he's trained up and doing it. So Leonard, man, I really appreciate you coming on, hanging out with me. I really enjoyed this conversation, brother. I'd love to do it again with you sometime in the future.
Yeah, man.
All right, brother.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you, man. God bless.
Okay. God bless you. Bye.
Leonard Jones, ladies and gentlemen, MorningStar Ministries. Good stuff, great stuff. Y'all let me know in the comments if my stream is cutting in and out. I'm recording this on the back end too, just in case. But yeah, man, this podcast, man, what the people I've been able to talk to over the years, it's been insane. Like, man, I've been able to talk to people that I've looked up to since I was, 6, 7 years old. Had conversations with people and have them on here as guests. People who have made a huge impact on my life that I guess at the time, listening to their music or watching their work, there's like that celebrity and that renown there. It's like you feel like you know them because you've listened to, hundreds of hours of their material. Leonard Jones, definitely one of them. Busy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony, as I was a kid, was definitely one of them. Andrew Schwab from Project 86. I mean, the majority of these people, man, I've just reached out to them in the different seasons that I'm in, and God lines it up. I'm able to have these people on here, pick their brain and talk to them. And it's like, you don't understand. Like, even in our Discord, I give a shout out to our Discord community. Those of you who want to join, the link is in the description. But we've been listening to a lot of MorningStar here lately, and it's really good stuff. And it's something about that music that has longevity and like push the envelope, something different. It wasn't just what was popular at the time. Trust me, like it wasn't for everybody. I like he's saying, like you wouldn't hear their music on the radio. I had my friends who couldn't stand them. They couldn't stand their music. But for those who were wanting to get into the spirit and go deep with God in the spirit realm, like their music was a catalyst to that. And I want my music to do that. I want to be able to put my music on for people and them be able to get along with God or ride in their car and be taken to another place as you're listening. MorningStar Ministries and Leonard Jones and all those names he mentioned that he's worked with over the years have definitely been a part of that in my life. And again, the Lord was showing me what it meant to be prophetic in these giftings and abilities. It was accompanied by MorningStar Ministries, by the work of the preaching, the teaching, the writings of Rick Joyner, and the worship of Leonard Jones and Don Potter and some of those guys. And it was just beautiful, just that whole essence for me and how much it meant to me. And I'm doing what I'm I'm doing what I'm doing today because of those guys. That's the beauty. And there's a lot of people strategically that have been placed in my life, and I'm like, they have shaped me. They've imparted something, even knowingly or unknowingly, that shaped the way I approach music or approach life or approach spirituality. And yeah, man, it was an honor to speak with him. Good stuff. I want to, I'm sorry, I'm getting over this cold, guys, in my throat. So, I want to play you guys a snippet of this video here. I'm going to play the video, and those listening, you can listen to the audio end. Both will do justice. You can listen to it. But there was a guy listening to the TruthSeekah podcast. I guess he was into some esoteric, deeper understanding stuff, and but he's also a Christian too. He listened to the interview that I did with J.D. Ramsey, who is a tent revivalist, preacher, evangelist. He's doing the old school tent revival, setting up a big tent in the middle of the country, preaching. People come, they're saved and delivered and healed. Really cool guy. We did an episode on and I've been working with this guy for some years. I've done his website, did his logos and stuff like that. So I've been working with him for some years. Had him on as a guest, and we talked about seeking God in the secret chambers of prayer, and really where all spiritual authority and spiritual power comes from is in those secret places with God, where you draw away, and which is the same thing we were talking about today. Leonard Jones says his most powerful times with God isn't on stage with thousands of people. It's when he goes in his prayer room and shuts the door and just gets alone with God. Those encounters that he's had there has changed his life. Same for me. But that's what we talked about on the interview with J.D. Ramsey. If you haven't heard that one, be sure to go back and listen. It was really good. But this guy was listening, and he got convicted. I guess because he had not been in his prayer chamber. He hadn't been going to that secret place with God. You sometimes you can get caught up in just seeking knowledge, seeking understanding, and you kind of get away from the experiential knowledge of God, of just being with God, right? You learn about God and theories in the universe and things like that versus just going to meet with God yourself. And that's the privilege that we all have through Christ, that we're able to kind of go boldly to the throne room of God through Christ and what he's done for us. And so Christ takes that veil or that wall that separates us, that gulf that separates us from God, and he bridged the gap, that we don't have to have the priests, we don't have to have these systems in place and all of this kind of weird stuff. Essentially why people aren't going to church right now, because of all that weird stuff in between you and God. Like you have to jump through these hoops and pretend to be someone you're not, and pretend you don't like things, or pretend like you don't listen to the TruthSeekah podcast, whatever the church would tell you. Jesus busted that junk open, and that's the liberty that is in Christ and the freedom. We talked about that. The guy felt convicted to return to his first love, as the scripture says, to return through prayer, and he felt convicted, but he felt encouraged, and he got closer to God. The guy said that he lived about 2 hours away from where J.D. Ramsey was preaching. So he thought to himself, why don't I go check him out? So he loaded him and his family up 2 hours and drove 2 hours. And they went to the meeting, and they had an encounter with God. He brought his son with them who's been experiencing some issues, and they got a miracle. So I'm just going to play this. It's about 6 minutes or so, I believe. But I want you guys to be encouraged, and then I'll come back and do a little bit of commentary. But I'm going to go ahead and play this, and I want you guys just to listen. I'm going to let JD tell you, because this is JD kind of talking about that whole experience during his preaching last week. So let's see. All right, here I go.
Yeah.
Let me know in chat if you can hear it.
I don't come out here with too many things purposed in my mind most of the time. I may have something to say, but the Lord always has the liberty to take it whichever direction He wants to go. And so thankful for the moving of the Holy Spirit. The only reason I do tent revivals is because of the freedom that exists here. That's it. Trust me. If it wasn't for that, I couldn't go in an area and rent a place and probably stay there uninhibited and unhindered for quite a long time. It's not like I'm trying to keep the tent revival tradition going. Trust me. When I get to heaven, the first thing I'm going to ask some of those guys from the 1950s, like Oral Roberts and A.A. Allen and all those guys, how they ever kept their suits so clean. When you see them, they're always impeccably dressed. I don't know. Maybe I can figure that out now. They stay clean. It's just a lot of hard work, but you know, the fruit of it's always worth it. The things that happen out here, I've seen so many things happen. People think you got to get on a jet plane and go to a foreign country to see some of this stuff happen in the United States that we see happen underneath these tents. Powerful things. And so, just because you're in the middle of Nowheresville, USA, doesn't mean something extraordinary can't happen in here tonight. So just make your mind up. I've already got my mind made up. I'm going to read this testimony I got from last night from a gentleman who came down here. This is incredible. He messaged me this today. This is awesome. How many of y'all were here last night?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's good, wasn't it? God just moved, and we let him do it. And this gentleman here, he's from St. Louis. He found out about the meeting by listening to a podcast I was on with another Christian rap artist out of Mobile, Alabama. I was on a program here a couple of weeks ago, and he was interviewing me, just talking to me about my life and encounters with God and supernatural things. And I guess his podcast is pretty well received. Got a fairly broad audience. Got a lot of response back from it. So it provokes some people. But this guy heard the podcast. He's a Christian rapper, and he lives up towards St. Louis. I think over Madison. Is that by Granite City? That's where he stays. And he had messaged me and asked me when the meeting was going on and said he'd probably come down. And anyway, this is what happened. He showed up last night. This is what I'm talking about, what faith and expectation does. All right? It just puts a pull on God. And I spent most of the time I was talking last night. If you really got the crux of what I was talking about the power of hunger, spiritual hunger. Now, most people just don't have any. That's why they never get anything from God. They're really not that hungry. If they were, the Lord would feed them. You can't fake it. I can read you like a book. If you're not hungry, I can tell. When I come out here and preach, I've preached all kinds of nights all over the United States, and I know when people are hungry and I know when people are not. I know how to make them hungry, so it's not a bad night for me, but I mean, it's a shame I got to make people hungry. My God, I got to go out here and make these folks hungry. I got to go out here and make them want God. So this isn't a boring night out here tonight, because I'm going to get blasted one way or the other, whether you want to come along with it or not. But basically, I mean, everything I said last night all went back to humility and hunger and how it puts a pull on God. Real simple stuff. You don't ever hear anything about this preached anymore because nobody's encountering God. They don't know anything about it. It's the truth, all right? I mean, I'm not saying that there's no people that are encountering the Lord, but people that understand humility before the Lord. And I'm a big guy, and I'm a loud guy, and I'm a man's man, but behind closed doors, I'm his, and I'm broken, and I got a contrite spirit. You know, I get ready for my meetings, I'm just going to sit on the floor and cry. That's what I do. It's my strategy right there. You want to know my secret? That's it. I go sit down on the floor and I cry. It's awesome. It works out great. I get real broke up over people, and I get real broke up over their situations, and come out here and God bless the place. It works out well. It's my formula. You can do this, all right? You know, people say, you know, I'm not going anywhere with the Lord. I say, well, have you tried tears yet? There's just something about it. I was in there asking him for some money for a couple puppies the other day, and I was bawling about it too. So a couple puppies, like a little kid. I don't know, he's gonna give me a couple puppies too. I want some expensive dogs. And I want him to put the money in my hands, buy me some expensive dogs. I'm going with my daddy, asking him for a puppy. He's a good daddy. I know that might seem shallow to you, but I'm pulling on him for some puppies. I want some nice puppies. So I'll not just go cry about it, you know. That's just the stuff that happens behind closed doors at my house. But this is the power of hunger. This is what it'll do. Hunger and humility. You know, a lot of times people want to get a miracle for God, but they can't even sit through 15 minutes of the service. I mean, I hope your attention span's a little bit longer than that, and that you give God a little bit more time than that. We just want to get in and get out. And people don't understand, you know. You don't understand what's going on in people's lives in here tonight. Just the different circumstances and the situations. I mean, if you can pull back the veil and see everything that's going on, how desperate people actually are, and how desperately they need an intervention from God, that's what we're doing out here. I mean, we're dealing with life and death issues with people. We really are. I mean, I deal with people like Matt that's been coming out here. He's not here tonight. He was going to go home and kill himself that night he came out here and got delivered. Now he's back on fire. His marriage is back right. His church is about to blow up. So this is awesome right here. This guy, he messaged me yesterday, said, what time's meeting start? I want to get down there. Told me how he found out about that. Now this is what he said. God really touched him and his wife last night, but I prayed for his son. His son was about that big, and his eyes were just going everywhere crazy. He said, what's up, brother? I said, I just wanted to testify. You prayed for my son last night. He had been having behavioral issues, and he couldn't concentrate or even write his name. He couldn't even tell you all the letters. So he's talking about his son. He couldn't even tell you the letters of his name. Well, since you prayed, we haven't seen a major difference in him. He seems calm and normal, like I can have a conversation with him, and he looks at me eye to eye and dialogues with me when before he couldn't. He wrote his full name at school and told us every letter of his name. We're experiencing a miracle in our son, and I give God all the glory. Thank you, brother, for believing with us in agreement. This is an amazing transformation through the blood of the cross. This is why we do this. This is why I do this stuff. All right. So just to add more, so yesterday we took him to the doctor for the first time, and the doctor was ready to put the boy on medication. The school noticed something was wrong, so they tested him, and they were waiting to give us the results from the doctor. Me and my wife were not wanting to put him on meds. I wouldn't want to put my kid on those kind of things either. It was tugging at me yesterday to drive all the way to Carbondale to just expect whatever the Lord had for me and my family. Last night I asked my son if he wanted to get prayed over. I didn't want to force, and I wanted him to decide. Finally, he said yes. Thought he had some kind of form of ADHD, and I mean, if you would have saw the little boy, I don't know if y'all know the little boy I was talking about if you were here last night, but his eyes were just going ripping all over the place. We serve a mighty God.
Wow.
But if you want something from him, you need to get real desperate.
Wow. Excuse me again. Wow. So the guy went out there and seen JD, felt led of the Lord to go, took his son with him. His son was suffering from some ailment, some kind of ADHD or whatever. And he said that JD was saying his eyes were just kept moving all over the place. He said he couldn't hold a conversation with his son. He couldn't spell his name. He couldn't write his name just because he couldn't hold a thought. And it was just hard to kind of get through to his son. He took him up there in faith, drove 2 hours, got there in faith, went up for prayer. JD prayed for the family, and I'm assuming they fell out under the power of God, is what he said. God touched him, took the boy back to get tested and at school, And he's been able to hold conversations with his son. He's given his son understanding, being able to control his body, self-control. Like when you have no control over your mind and no control over your thoughts and no control over your eyes and things like that, the Holy Spirit comes to give us self-control, and he imparted that to that. That's a miracle. He got it. It's being moved through desperation and hunger and wanting it, so much so that he drove 2 hours. I mean, and he got what he came for. His son got touched by God. I still believe in miracles. I really do. It's beautiful. And I'm thankful that God would do that. God would use me or use this podcast or this platform strategically. And this is with intention. Like every guest is on here for a reason. Like I said, there's people who did not like that episode. It was a very churchy episode. It was we used a lot of Christianese. Most people don't understand that, but we tried to make it more plain for everybody, universal. God is a universal term in general. When we talk about God, we're talking about God, getting alone with God, the power of God, moving of the Holy Spirit. It's not for everybody. Some people may not even listen to that podcast. But this guy listened to that episode, listening to the TruthSeekah podcast, listened to it, stepped out in faith, drove 2 hours to go see J.D. Ramsey. His son got rocked by the Holy Spirit and got healed. That is God strategically using this podcast, me, and I love it. This isn't a one-time deal. I get these messages all the time. And they used to blow me away, but I just get them so much now. I love it. I just brag on God every time. I don't take it for granted, but I just brag on God and I thank God. It's always something. It's always, hey, I heard you through this, or I heard you through that, or I looked up Jordan Maxwell and here you are praying for me. And when you prayed at the end of the Jordan Maxwell interview, I felt God. I started to cry when you started praying, and I wanted to know what you know, and I wanted to give my life to the God you serve. I get those messages. This is the strategy. Every move is a calculated step. And it's awesome when you get to work with God. When like we're talking about going into the secret chambers, getting God's heart, getting that vision and making it manifest. Okay, God, how can you use me? Being led by the Spirit is being able to move in the Spirit, walking in the Spirit. The word is caruso in the Greek. That's the walk in the Spirit. It's a cadence. Left, right, left, right. When you go left, I go left. When you go right, I go right. When you don't move, I'm not moving. Right? And the Bible says that those who are led by the Spirit of God are the sons of God. Sons and daughters of God. You got to be led by the Spirit. Whatsoever is not done of faith is sin. Without faith, you cannot please God. It takes stepping out in faith and being able to be obedient to the voice and to the wind